Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Florence.
Hey,
So
nice.
nice to meet you.
Isn't that your picture's better on here than it is on the AMI.
Oh, thank you.
And of course, you never saw my picture, so here I am. That's okay. Well, whatever you want to ask me, you ask me.
Okay. Shall we start off with maybe just a little bit of your history in the field? I'm not totally sure which graduate program did you go to, or were you self-taught?
I can tell you how I got started. I was a painting teacher,
Oh,
and I had a carpool with other people to take little kids to school. And the guy happened to be in the anatomy department. And he said, "Oh, you've got to go to anatomy and see the pictures that came over from Europe." And I thought, when you're an artist, people always say, "Oh, you've got to go to my cousin's opening, or you've got to go to this gallery and see." And I always went because, to be polite. So
right.
I tootled down. So I tootled down to the hospital. Had no idea what anatomy was. Well, I knew what it was, but the use of it. And I looked at all these pictures, and I thought, I can do that. So the guy who was head of anatomy said, "Oh, just go in the lab and see what they do in there." And the kids are really nice. I was 40 at that time, and the kids were like 17 or whatever.
Okay.
So, it's kind of making a big change a little later. I'm so glad I did. So he said, "Well, if you really want to do it, you have to do your own dissection." So I said, "Okay." So that was the beginning of making my portfolio. And I did a female cadaver and took my time because I realized you cut it off, you don't have it anymore.
Right.
I made my portfolio. And from there, I just was very, very fortunate. I went to lectures for the anatomy kids. And the first lecture was by a fellow who was a neuroanatomist. And I just went up to him and said, "Do you need any drawings?" He said, "Can you draw the brain?" I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Well, come on over." And I ended up doing the drawings for his brain dissection in his book called The Human Brain and Spinal Cord. His name was Leonard Hamer. But then I thought, oh, the end of the world is at hand, because now what am I going to do? And then I went to another lecture. A very interesting man, Dr. Edgerton, who is a reconstructive surgeon, gave his talk. So I took all my little drawings to him. Little did I know, he had been a big guy at Johns Hopkins before he came down to University of Virginia. And he'd had the best people leaning over his shoulder. I'm so glad I didn't know that. And he looked at my drawings and said, "Have you ever drawn in surgery?" And I said, "No." So again, the big trial. And he turned around and said, "Ooh, are you still here?" And I said, "No, I wouldn't leave for anything." And I stayed with him for 20 years and did his book. And so I didn't go through any of these programs. I already had the art.
Mm,
I did 2 cadavers because we were over in a sabbatical in Switzerland. My husband was in doing physics at CERN. And I, of course, went down to the anatomy department, and they gave me a body. And they said the only thing they wanted when I left was to pick a few drawings. So I thought, well, that's a good trade-off. And so I got a male there, looked like Jacques Cousteau, gorgeous. And so then I did some drawings for a surgeon over there because I was sketching in a lecture, and he came over and said, "I see you are doing drawings," and he needed, and I did. I came back and hooked up with Dr. Edgerton's group again, and it just kind of, I was just really, really lucky that I could make it, I guess, just day to day.
wow. I think you probably blew them out of the water with your skills. I mean, because it sounds like there was
Well,
not much of a
fortunately, I could already draw. I
mm,
mean,
mhm.
I didn't have to go through all that laborious stuff, but I did learn so much from the anatomy, and that's what I tell everybody. If you have a chance to do dissection, it's the best teacher you'll ever have. all the books,
Absolutely.
all the lectures, and all the observation. There's nothing like doing it with your own hands.
Oh yeah, and especially from life as well, right? I mean, trying to draw from even if you have really good photos, it takes away that depth, and so you're not able to reproduce it in the same way, right?
Right. And then, I don't know, when I showed up at the hospital with my little scrubs on, and nobody knew my name, but if they were coming out of the medical library, they knew who I was, and they'd come over and say, "Oh, we're doing a hysterectomy tomorrow morning," or "I need a drawing of the liver to take to Italy." And it just kind of grew.
Wow, wow.
It was a different time. It was a different time. And there was no digital art. It was sit there and draw it. And so there was some guy showing people things. And I said, "Well, where do I get carbon dust pencils?" And he said, "Well, in the university bookstore, back where the office is, there's a door it's kind of tied open with a rope. And down on the floor, there's a cigar box with carbon dust pencils." And I don't, oh man, is he pulling my leg? So I went over, and sure enough, there they were. And they'd already been sharpened, and some of them broken. And that's how I got my first carbon dust pencils.
Oh, so was that technique more widely used
Oh,
when you were starting out? Yeah.
yes, if you go back to Johns Hopkins people back in, say, the 40s and 50s in there, I can show you what the technique looks like. It was wonderful, very tedious.
Oh, I believe
You
it.
had to take your little pencil, put it on an emery board or something,
Oh, those little sandpaper kind of things, right?
sandpaper,
Slab. Yeah.
and you make a little dust. And then you take a red sable brush. You had to have a fine brush, and you brushed it onto scratch board. Though you weren't scratching, some people did add ink and scratch as well, but it just was a beautiful receptive surface. And
Mm.
I'll just show you one drawing, because it kind of shows you what you can do with carbon dust.
Yeah.
I can't see what I'm
Oh,
doing,
yeah.
but that's all carbon dust.
Oh, yeah. That's your work there?
This is mine. Oh
Oh,
yes,
that's
this
beautiful.
is the Edgerton book, The Art of
Okay.
Surgical Technique. And we just did real simple things of how to handle skin and how to cut. And I just learned from him. First drawing, he said, when you use a scalpel, the pressure you put on the scalpel deflects the pulp of the finger.
Mm.
I thought, gee,
Mm.
I'm doing a whole book with this guy. Anyway, it turned out great. I learned so much. He always told, and he always taught within surgery. And that was interesting. Dr. Edgerton would have long surgeries. They went on for hours, and he would teach while he did the operation. He was always remembering, when I was at Valley Forge, or whatever. And so it was just like a constant graduate school for me.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing. I think most of my career really has been through the surgical visualization and animations and stuff. But the experience of drawing in the OR, as you mentioned, is just, it can't be matched. It's amazing, right? I think you probably, were taking it to a different level than I've done it at. Do you have any sort of tips or advice for capturing those moments, because they come and go so quickly, right?
Well, what I did was take my little sketchbook and go in there. The first thing I saw, because one of the surgeons was told to pick what I would see first, and he always teased me. So he picked orbital hypertelorism, which is a very, very long operation. There are kids where their eyes are, they have a biped nose, so their eyes are out here. They're very adorable. They're kind of like deer. Um, and you cut the skin, you pull it down like a bathing cap. It's very shocking. If you've never seen surgery before, I've never seen an appendix come out. And then they cut like eyeglasses of your bone, and then they move the eyes together, put it all back together again. There you are, done.
Oh, wow.
Took all
Wow.
day, but it was fascinating. And I realized they don't stop for you. and I'm drawing away. So I got a camera.
Ah,
And then I realized, well, they don't stop for you to change film or if your camera jams. So I ended up with two cameras.
mm,
So, you know, so I was well prepared and I just walked around like that.
wow, that's amazing. Wow. What other sort of things did you pick up as far as like interacting with people in the OR and making sure that you're not touching anything sterile, but
They were
you're
very, 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 he said, get as close as you want. Don't touch us and
yeah.
don't expect us to teach you anatomy. And, and end of interview.
Mhm.
So again, I was on my own the whole time, but the nurses were wonderful. And anesthesia would say, hey, come over here. And they'd jam me in among all their, you know, gear because it'd say you can see better from here. I mean, everybody would really, really help me in those early days.
Oh, that's
I'm
awesome.
quite grateful.
That's awesome. Yeah, we always make it a point to thank all the OR nurses on each of our videos. We have a tagline at the bottom there because really it's all about forming good, positive relationships with those folks.
Oh, I know. I always, at the end, I always, when they're scattering, I'd always say, thanks for the tour. And if somebody invited me to come see, say their hysterectomy or whatever they were proud of, I would take pictures, but I'd make a point of taking a picture of the guy who invited me, the chief guy,
Mm.
make a really nice picture of him working. I'd run home and I'd made a little dark room and a bathroom, and I'd shake up my little tube of pictures, couldn't wait to see them. And I'd always make them a nice big glossy 8x10 and give it to them as a thank you for inviting me. So,
Nice.
you know, that worked.
Nice. I love it. Public relations, right?
Yeah, I did it all, I guess. I wasn't aware of it. I just, you know, kept on doing it.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Wow. So now sorry, this Dr. Edgerton, you said?
Yes, Milton Edgerton, he died last year,
Okay.
but he was one of the big three. There was Edgerton, there was Converse up in Boston, there was Tessier in France. And at the end of the Second World War, we had sulfa drugs. So for the first time, people with really horrendous injuries were kept alive. And they came, you know, brought them back to, you know, Valley Forge or wherever. And there they were. They said, what are we going to do now? And so those three were the first to do muscle transplants within a body.
Oh,
They take, say, a small brevis off the top of your foot, artery, nerve, vein, always put it inside of the face, and it worked.
okay.
It's
So
fascinating.
were these surgeons ENT exclusively, or were they sort of like general surgeons?
Dr. Edgerton was what was called reconstructive plastic. He would get things brought in from all over, like some little kid way up in Appalachia, and the minister would see the deformity and arrange to bring him that sort of thing.
Oh, wow. So PEDS cases as well. I mean, they sort of just handled whatever.
All kinds. Um, in 2000, of course, I'd been here for quite a while, so I knew people. And there was no new young guy, uh, Gamper, Dr. Gamper, and they had an arrangement over in India in a small village where a clinic had been built specifically for UVA plastic surgeons to come and work on cleft lip kids. And people came from all around. They had a free clinic for the week, and we were treated royally. And they had Rotarians. You know, we had the Rotarians here in the States. Well, they have huge, huge brotherhood of Rotarians over there. And they met us at the airport. They met us at the train station. They put us in their cars, took us many miles to get to this little village. And when we're not there doing the cleft lip thing, it's a lying in hospital for women giving birth. And
Okay.
it's very, again, it's like Appalachia. It's a poor, poor part of Bihar. And we left from Calcutta, took a train up into nowhere, and then got in the Rotarians' cars and drove for a long time to get to the village. And they thought, okay, we'll just show you the clinic because we'd start the next morning. And we drove down there, and it was like the whole town was standing outside of that clinic waiting for us. So Dr. Gamber said, well, we can do intake. We'd done all this travel from the United States and across India, but that night we did intake of just filling out all the paperwork for these children. And the people who were left, who were going to do it the next day, just laid down right in the hall and slept right there in front of the door. They weren't going to lose their chance for their kid. It was quite an experience.
Wow. Yeah. Sounds like it.
Oh, and I was there to take the photographs.
Oh, okay. And when was that? What year?
2000.
Oh, 2000. So not that long ago.
Oh, so I thought, hey, that's a good way to start the millennium. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
And then when I went to the first meeting, I walked in there and everybody was busy talking. And I looked around, I thought, I'm the only one in this room with a Medicare card. But they didn't seem to mind.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome.
I was just teaching. It's very interesting because I was already doing some medical art, and I went to the art department at UVA, a young fellow. I said, why don't we have a class in medical art? Because there's a big hospital there, a big teaching hospital. And he looked at me very sternly and said, we don't do commercial art.
Okay.
Yeah, I was proud. There was a beautiful building right across from the hospital, and an old building, but it had studios in it where I taught just regular art. And I thought, well, this would be ideal. Nurses or, young doctors who wanted to do a little bit of drawing. Anyway, I didn't do it, so I called it scientific illustration. And I did night class, and I also went to a small community college here called Piedmont and taught scientific illustration. So basically, I was teaching medical art. And several of those students have gone on. One went to Galveston and got a degree. Another one, I don't know where she went, but she's back here. And she is, they do belong to the AMI. They're pucka illustrators.
Wow. Okay. So have you ever considered teaching at one of the grad programs or undergraduate programs?
Well, I taught here in Charlottesville, but Paul, I'm going to be 90 in September.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe you don't want another job.
So Zoom suits me. Sometimes I look and I think, I still could do it. I took a wonderful course at the law school. It was called Creativity. The guy was 94, and he was a barn burner. And I really enjoyed it. It was a really good class. So I don't know how long I'll do this, but
well, that's one of the things I love about this career is that you can just keep doing it.
That's it. I can't imagine saying, I've retired and I'm not going to do it. What I am doing is experimenting with acrylics. I always painted in, I'll show you oil painting.
Okay, yeah.
Now that we're talking about ancient history.
Oh, nice.
That's me in 1951.
Oh, wow.
And that's an oil painting. And, nobody ever suggested medical art because nobody knew about it, I guess. But I was very, very close to it so many times. And I just had to fall into it by seeing the drawings here at UVA. So as far as teaching, yes, teaching on Zoom is a different thing entirely. And I found it quite fascinating.
Yeah, I wanted to maybe back up a little bit and just talk about when you were younger. Were you always artistic at a younger age?
Yeah, I was I guess I was a weird child. I'd sit in the clouds all afternoon. I think I really frightened my mother doing that. And I'd find things to do. I'd find old flower pots in my grandmother's, we called it the kitchen. I guess it used to be, but that's where they kept all the garden materials and old cans of paint. And I'd paint up the flower pots and put flowers and animals on them and give them to my mom and just draw the trees across the street. And the first real material I got was when the Second World War started, my mother and dad had befriended the minister and his wife. They were much younger, but they didn't feel comfortable in the kind of the bar room country club crowd. So they befriended my mother and dad. And Mrs. Hayes knew that I did a little bit of drawing on my own. So when they left town to go in the Army, which right that night, her husband signed up to be a chaplain in the Army. And she brought me pastels, little box of broken pastels, and a piece of paper. And I always remember there was a little square out of the corner, cut out of the corner. That, why would you do that? How does that happen? Of course, once you get a great big piece and you cut it up in a lot of pieces, that does happen. But anyway, that was my first material. And then from there, just kept going. Then I was still just getting into high school. And a friend of my parents decided to have a summer school. Well, there's a little dinky town on the Allegheny River, north of Pittsburgh. And who goes to summer school? Well, I showed up in my little frilly dress and found the teacher, real salty guy with a plaid shirt and jeans. And he was a great teacher, and he was my first teacher. Well, I was his only student for 2 weeks. So every day we'd get the easels and the paints and go out, and he'd set me up and he'd talk to me, blah, 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 blah. And I just did it. You know, I didn't know that you're being artistic or, hey, this is what you're supposed to be doing. But it set me up, because then when I went to Syracuse University, all the kids from the High School of Music and Design, anyway, really arty kids came, and I couldn't believe these creatures, you know. And I could paint fast, I could draw fast, which meant I could get something on my easel before the teacher came in. So there was always something to be talked about by the time the teacher came around the room. And that was saving grace, to be able to do that quickly. And so then I took all the courses there. And then 10 years later, I went to Carnegie Tech down in Pittsburgh, and I walked in, and the dean looked at me and I looked at him, and we both said, "What are you doing here?" And it was my old dean from Syracuse, who's now the dean of art at Carnegie Tech. And I said, well, I feel I have to get a master's and I need a job. And so he fixed me up. He gave me a class to teach and put me with a respected painting teacher there. And I got it done.
Wow. Wow. What a great story. I think one of the most frequent questions I get from folks who are interested in getting into the field is, how do you enter the field? What's the best way to prepare? Adding on to what you've already sort of described, what else do you think younger people could kind of benefit from?
Well, it's such a different world now. It's such a different world. It's all so digital. I keep paying to belong to the AMI because I really appreciate what they did for me way back when I didn't even know you existed and I didn't know what I'd be doing. But a publisher, when I did the Brain book, suggested that I should join the AMI, and I looked into it and I joined it, and it was very helpful. So I just have kept on there. I've gone to a couple of the meetings. The first one was in Toronto, and that's where I met Nancy Joy. And I remember Grant's Atlas with a little N Joy under those drawings. Mm-hmm. And I always thought that was kind of weird. I mean, what's joyful about these little gray drawings? I realized it's a real person, and anyway, she was very nice to our group that came up to Toronto. And then I noticed for years afterwards, she must have been a very, very good teacher, because all the new stuff that came up on the AMI, back when they had much more of a gallery, which I wish they still had, and you could really see people's work. And I thought, gee, all those people from Toronto are really good, every one of them. I mean, good in the sense that it stuck out. I could find Toronto. I could find Toronto on that gallery. So
kind. You're so kind. That's great. One of the things I love about seeing the work from all of the different graduate programs is they each sort of have this own flavor or, style that's unique to each of those programs.
Oh, definitely. Well, one of the things that helped me a lot in surgery was, as I mentioned, the camera. So when it turned out at the end that I did Edgerton's book, every frontispiece is one of my photographs. But I'll show you my favorite photograph that I ever took. And I call it Dr. Edgerton's hands. And where are we?
Oh, nice. Oh, that's a beautiful photo.
And, the light just hit his thumbs, and I got to get that picture. Click. That's my favorite. But I didn't take the pictures in order to copy them onto the page. I took the pictures to make my own library of hands and instruments so they would be proper. And then as far as the people's faces, I never used a real patient unless it was required.
Right.
I would go to things like a car show, where people go to look at old jalopies and race cars and stuff. And I wasn't looking at the cars. I'd just take shots of all the people's faces. And then I could take types of people to put in my pictures.
Oh, nice.
So that's what I did with the camera.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, building up that archive of, assets that you can then use into your own work.
I had the faces because, for example, when Dr. Edgerton said, well, I want to show opening a cyst. Well, you don't just cut into a cyst. You put sharp scissors in and you open it to drain a cyst. I mean, you just learn these things when somebody tells you what they want. And so I said, well, where will we put it? He said, how about the axilla under the arm? So then I'm thinking, okay, I can't stick it on a really old person. I can't stick it on a little baby, because that would be quite shocking. So I got this real macho looking guy with his mustache, and I stuck it on him. It was from one of those car expos.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. Was there a particular surgical discipline you enjoyed the most to illustrate?
I think I spent so much time with Dr. Edgerton, and since he was doing a book on how you move skin and how you repair skin, and some things were tricky, like how to tie a knot in a deep hole, that takes about 8 different pictures, those kind of things, technical things, but also it was a pleasure to do the more surface sort of pictures. I could pick the face, pick what was happening, and I could always just say, I got to think about it. And he never pressured me. I could go away and come back 3 days later and show him some sketches. So, very fortunate that way. I did see I was watching thoracic surgery that I'd been invited to. And at that point, I was still drawing, and I'm turning the page. And the surgeon very sharply said, don't turn the page. You're disturbing the air.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, so I thought, well, how am I going to do the drawing? So there I was, stroking the leaf of paper carefully so I could get to the next page. And needless to say, I was not invited back there again. And I didn't really find it that charming to look at.
Yeah. Wow. That leads me to another question I have to ask you, because I think this is one of the greatest challenges for all of us working as, medical illustrators, and especially in surgery, is how to manage those client relationships. What sort of advice or tips do you have for just working with other folks who might have really different personalities?
They do have different personalities. I've seen quite a few. I think you just have to make sure that your work is what you think is right for the occasion. And if it isn't right for them, it's no big deal. Then get somebody else. Well, not so easy in a small place like here. But I think it just has to do with your own personality and how you meet people just in any walk of life. And if you're honest and you're kind and you're honest with the kind of work that you present and how you can explain it, and you can be flexible and change it. I know one of those very elaborate carbon dust, which is on scratch board, so you don't change it easily. And boy, I felt good. And Dr. Edgerton said, oh, we usually have a nurse with a clamp holding this. And I look at the picture, which already is designed. I think, no. So anyway, I managed to get it in there, worked fine. But a funny thing happened to me over in Switzerland, because I ended up doing a bunch of drawings over there.
Oh, wow.
And I did a cross section of the head, and all the bony parts, I did, line, or maybe I did stipple, I forget what it was. Anyway, I filled in all the bones. And I took it the next day to the surgeon, and he looked at it, and I could see he was very distressed, and he didn't know what to say to me. And then he finally said, that texture over here means cancer.
Uh-oh.
So the whole picture was covered with that texture.
Oh, no.
I said, oh, that's all right, I'll fix it. Well, I didn't use whiteout. I just did it over. But you don't know when you're in a different country. When you're in a different country, you don't know what you're seeing. But that's what I love too, was seeing ORs in different countries.
Mm.
And they played classical music in the Swiss OR. Gwyn, lovely string quartet would be playing, not there, but a tape.
Sure.
And I went to one in England. It was raining like crazy. Thought I'd never get there because the train was held up because political people from the United States were on the train, so they stopped everything else. And I thought, how am I going to get to that hospital?
Oh, man.
Well, I made it. I just made it. But all kinds of funny things happen to you when you're out traveling.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love traveling. I haven't done it much professionally. I went to one work conference in Brazil, and that was an amazing experience. Really interesting. Have you ever been to any surgical conferences for the different surgical associations?
No, not the medical. I've only been to the AMI once.
Okay.
I went to one in Chicago, and I went to the one in Toronto. And I look at what's on the AMI web. And of course, everybody loses me now because of all the digital stuff. I mean, I only just got a smartphone 2 weeks ago. So,
Congratulations.
Between Zoom and a smartphone, I feel like I'm being dragged into the 21st century by my hair. But
don't worry, I think we all feel that way.
Yeah, well, I really enjoy reading it, and I do question some people, and I get remarkable answers. I wrote to somebody, I don't think I understood one word in his little hickey, all digital, do this and app and blob, and I said, what planet are you on? And then I explained, I said, I come from pen and ink and carbon dust, and I got the nicest letter back. And then he explained to me that he really, really loved studio work. Because I said the one thing that I would just tell everybody, don't give up the joy of your studio work. Painting, drawing, sculpture, pottery, whatever it is. Save a little time and keep doing that. It keeps you grounded, it keeps you focused. And it's instructive in its own way.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the traditional media, I think I had mentioned to you before, I hear from a lot of people in my age group that they crave getting back to just paper and pencil and pen. So there a lot of people, even though they work a lot in Photoshop or 3D, they want to get back on paper.
Yeah, I do wish that we had a bigger gallery space on the AMI, that we could see, people could put in their studio work as well as their latest. I'm so proud of the little virus guy with all the knobs. And I think,
the coronavirus
our guys
pictures.
do that.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
all over the world now. I'm just so proud for them. And but a lot of the other digital stuff, when I first saw it, I thought, well, how do you know that's an enzyme or a protein or something?
Hmm.
And then that becomes a language. Somebody starts it and then they'll do it. I mean, that little coronavirus thing is going to be, that's what it's going to be forever.
Yep.
That shape and that depiction, that symbol. But a lot of the first digital things I saw, I thought, I don't understand this, because I was used to seeing anatomical drawings by Bradle and people like that.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And they're very beautiful, you know, little splooches and thingies and twisties and different colors. But who's to say what they are? They didn't mean anything to me.
Mm.
And that's where I was very surprised, for people who said, yeah, I still like to work in the studio too. And it just seems like some of the digital stuff could have a little bit more of the quality of coming from the human hand. And I don't know how you do that, because I saw one thing about shaping bone, and I went on. And I was moved. I just put on the web, why don't you just paint it? It was so painful to watch them twist that thing around digitally. And, you know, the sum total wasn't that great. Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean.
Oh, I absolutely do. Yeah, you can end up putting a lot of time into developing like a 3D model of something, and then when you get your final render, it doesn't look all that great.
And buying some of the programs, you know, first way back, I think I saw Maya or something like that, and I thought, maybe I'll play around with it. And so I pulled it up on the web, and it was $600, and you know, I was out in the world not doing the hospital stuff anymore. No, I don't think I need to do that.
Do you still prefer like carbon dust as your kind of like bread and butter technique? Do you still?
No, I don't still do it.
Oh, okay.
It's very tedious. In fact, I don't even know if you can get scratch board anymore. They did kind of substitute a grainy plastic film, but you know, just kind of took the joy out of it, that stuff. I mean, then you're just trying to reproduce something that can be photographed. And even the whole idea of sending your drawings off to the publisher to be photographed, that's a moot point. That doesn't happen anymore either.
Yeah.
So the hands-on part, no, I think I just enjoy the painting and that sort of thing now.
Is it? Would you say acrylics or oils?
Yeah, well, I always did oils, but then I didn't paint for a long time because I was doing the medical art with its own particular materials, and I enjoyed what I was doing, so I didn't even think about it until, you know, later on. I thought, well, I'll try painting again, and I'll try the acrylics now, and so I'm just kind of playing with that.
Right on. I enjoy acrylics. I also like gouache. Have you ever used gouache much?
Yes, gouache is very nice too.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, it's nice for layering up. You know, I think there's the strengths and the challenges of all these different mediums, of course, right?
Every single one.
Yeah.
Every single one.
I think, yeah, especially with the traditional media, it really helps to see someone do it right in front of you.
Yeah, you have. I think.
When you're working, did you have any sort of a routine or any way of getting involved and immersed in your own work so that you could be as focused as possible?
I think I was very lucky because the goals that I did for the books were pretty well laid out. The brain book, I mean, you got a brain and you're really focused on that object. The first thing I do is find out the operation I was going to see and when they're going to start. And I'd be up there. If it was 7:30 in the morning, I was there because I wasn't just there to see the operation. I was there to see the whole thing. And I would see what that person looked like, and pretty soon they've got betadine all over them. Pretty soon they're covered up to here. But you have a really personal feeling of who that person is. Then the doctors come in and you step out of the way, let them all get arranged where they are, and then you can get in as close as you want, and whatever's relevant at the time that looks interesting, I'd start taking pictures. And there was a kind of an office. It wasn't, I wouldn't call it a medical illustration office, but one guy would come down, and he was supposed to come down at 11:30 and take a picture. And so Ron would come in, he'd see me there with my sketchbook, and he'd come over, what's happened, what's happened? So I'd start at the beginning, I go blah, 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 and then they did this, and then they did that, and then they did this. Then he'd take the picture, then he'd have to go back upstairs. Since I worked for Dr. Edgerton, nobody touched me. I was protected. He was a big man on campus, and boy, that helped.
Yeah, we have kind of a similar arrangement. My group and I, we have a surgeon we report to, and he plays referee a little bit sometimes to help us kind of smooth things over with other folks in the hospital.
Sure. No, it's a culture. It's very interesting. I liked it. I liked every minute of being in the OR, being in the hospital. I just found it fascinating.
Yeah, it is an amazing experience, and knowing that these people their entire careers are built around like putting us back together, and
Absolutely.
yeah,
But
it's
they're
amazing.
different. Yeah, the different groups are so different. Like the guy doing thoracic was so worried about the air that he just really couldn't operate there. I always said orthopedists wear plaid pants, and they're just a really jolly group. And you'd meet them at and Dr. Edgerton and his wife would have a bunch of colleagues in, and you could just tell the orthopedists would have really bright clothes and really bright personalities and just be going on. And some of the other, say, neurosurgeons, much more laid back, much more thoughtful, much quieter. It was so interesting.
Yeah, different personality types for each of the disciplines, right?
Yeah. Hey, they get it done. That's the point.
Yep. Oh yeah, definitely. So what do you do for fun in your own artistic practice? Do you have like stuff that you work on for fun?
Something I thought, if you had told me when I was still in hospital, hey, you'll be making beads, you'll be making jewelry, I'd say, in your dreams. And I'm trying to work off, well, because we traveled a lot, I got a lot of ethnic beads, like beads in India, that kind of thing. And you don't want to just scatter those off to a high school or something. So I'm trying now to use my best beads and finish off some jewelry. And then I'll give the rest of the stuff to a goldsmith I know who has a little shop. And he said, hey, I'll take the beads.
Oh, cool.
We'll see. I'm not quite ready to give them up yet, but I really enjoy it because what it makes you do is do design. Take time and design. When I went out to the Navajo Nation, we had a group here. We take food and clothes out there, and then you get to see people selling beads on the side of the street, and they call it string them and sell them.
Yeah.
Little Indian kid, we're going to buy it. And I don't do string them and sell them.
I've seen some other AMI members post some of their jewelry that's, anatomically themed or scientific themed. Have you done any of those? Like anatomical design? No.
No. Well, I always wear it around and give it kind of a test run to see if the weight is right and if the focus beads are in the right place. I mean, they're little subtlety things if you want to do it. That take your time, go back and restring the darn thing, but it's worth it. You get a piece you like.
Right on. What are some of the, like, when you think back on your career, what are some of the things, I guess maybe you would call it like a victory moment, or, something that was a huge challenge or something that had stressed you out, but then you had like an aha moment, or like, oh, I got it. And
well, I'll tell you, when I was over in Geneva, I went to the Institute de Morphology, it was called, University of Geneva. And I walked in there, and everybody knew who Edgerton was. I mean, how did I know? And they knew that I drew for him. And when I had done the body here in UVA, women had just been let into the university. They came in 1970. Before that, it was a young men's shirt and tie, coat, very proper gentleman's school. And when the women came in, and the whole age, ripped jeans and the whole thing, it was a big, big change. So when I wanted to do a body, an outsider, and the guy was told to call up, said absolutely not. And I thought, wait a minute, the head of anatomy invited me to do this. So I wasn't going to give up. And he went on and on and on. I said, he said, besides, you have to buy your body. And I said, how much is it? He said, $395. And I said, I'll take it. Big silence. And he said, okay, come on January 19th. I mean, you know, you don't realize he didn't want me in there. One, because I was a middle-aged woman that's from in his eyes, and I was not a medical student, and I just shouldn't be there. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that's where I made my portfolio, and that's what led me to Dr. Hamer and Dr. Edgerton. So it was worth $395. So when I went to Switzerland and said we were going to be here for a semester, and could I do dissection? Oh, absolutely, madam, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, how much will it be? No, you will be our guest.
Quite a different attitude there.
And then they said, if we could just have a few drawings at the end. I said, well, that's unfair. And so, well, the one surprising thing that people kind of like the story, I was doing drawings for a plastic surgeon over at their main hospital. And he wanted to show the muscles around the eye inside the orbit. And you can't do that with a cadaver because the cadaver's stiff, formaldehyde. You can't really stretch things around. So we had a coffee hour, and behind the anatomy department was the police department. So the detectives would come over and sit in our coffee hour and laugh and eat our cookies and drink our coffee. And I went there so I could hear French. Maybe I'd just pick up more of the language. So when Dr. Montanon asked me that, I thought, hey, the police department's right there. So I said, hey, if you're doing autopsy sometime, and I told him what he wanted, would you let me know? Well, then I didn't hear anything. You know, a couple of weeks went by and forgot about it. And I had my own they gave me my own room with a cadaver and all that, Jacques Cousteau. And this cop came in with a bucket and plopped it on my desk, and in French said, I'll be back at 4:00, and he left. So I looked inside, and here this really nice old guy's looking up at me. A head was in there, blue eyes, nice mustache. And the only thing I could think of was, how the heck did you end up with your head in a bucket in Geneva, Switzerland? It was just so odd to me.
That is odd.
It is. It was very odd. So anyway, then I looked at my watch, and it was 11 o'clock, and I thought, okay, forget lunch. I don't know how long it'll take, because I hadn't used that kind of material before. But anyway, I got the drawing done, had a little time left over, and I did all the cartilages of the nose. They're very pretty if you ever take a nose apart. And there is like little bird wings here. But he came back, didn't say a word, didn't look at the drawing, just I thanked him and he disappeared. Next time I go to coffee hour, nobody said a word. Nobody said, hey, did you get the material? Nothing. Nobody ever mentioned it again. So I had these two drawings, you know, kind of out of the blue.
Yeah.
And I still have them. I was so afraid that they might pick those when they wanted to choose what they wanted to keep. Yeah. I left all the drawings on the desk over the weekend. I thought, they'll never know if I don't put this, but hey, you know, a deal's a deal. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, they did not pick those drawings.
Do you still have them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, you know, there's a thing, Lloyd's library is out in Cincinnati. Have you heard of that?
I don't think I have.
Oh, they want portfolio stuff from my era. And I see that a lot of people have already given a whole lot of things there. Well, the Edgerton book and the Hamer book are both in the rare books library here at UVA. And so, of course, I can't give them the illustrations out of Edgerton's book because I don't own them.
Right. Yeah.
All that. But anyway, I think more people should know about the Lloyd Library. And
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to look this up. Okay. Oh wow. Yeah, I've just pulled up the website here. Oh, this is really nice. A lot of scientific botany, looks like natural science, natural history. Very cool. I love libraries. That's actually something my wife and I, whenever we travel to another city, like a foreign city, we always go to the biggest library in that city.
wonderful. Well, if you ever go to Cincinnati, Ohio, go see the Lloyd Library. Apparently it's famous. It's a really, really nice institution.
So would you say those drawings you did of the French, the severed head that landed in your office there, would you put those up with your favorite of the work that you've done?
Well, I showed you my favorite photograph, and
Mhm.
I don't have those drawings right here. If I thought of it, I'd have it and just hold it up for you. But
No problem. That
so,
was a beautiful photograph.
it was really fun. I was really very surprised. It was a last minute idea. The whole book was gray and black and white, and all the drawings are black and white. And so every frontispiece is one of the photos. And worked out good for me.
Nice. Do you have any favorite artists or any people that jump out at you?
Well, one of the artists I really, really like, has nothing to do with medical, is Diebenkorn from out in California. He's no longer living, but he does abstraction that actually means something. It's kind of like you see what he was doing, the layout of the streets or things of that sort. They're beautiful, and the color is beautiful.
What was the name? I'm trying to look it up right now. What was the name again? Devin Korn?
His name, Diebenkorn, Dieben, Korn.
Oh, I think Richard Diebenkorn?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Oh, wow.
I mean, we have so many abstractionists, and I have books on de Kooning and, the whole thing, but I have a book on Diebenkorn too. And when I took a train down to Santa Barbara and I looked out over the ground, and there was just kind of a brown dike for water retention and a brown field and a strip of green that had the light on it, but it had such an abstract quality, and it was Diebenkorn country. And I thought, yeah, that's it. It influenced him.
Oh, wow. Some of these images have a sort of a Frank Lloyd Wright-ish kind of feel to them.
That's true.
Wow. Cool stuff. Amazing. Well, Florence, we're at about an hour now. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. This has been great.
Well, we may not have hit some of the little subjects you were thinking of, but we got off on sidetracks, and here we are.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. Thanks a lot. So nice to meet you.
Likewise. And maybe we can do this again sometime.
Anytime you want. There are more stories. Always.
Awesome. Amazing.
Oh, gosh. Well, it's been a great, great pleasure.
Thank you. Likewise.
Okay.
All right. Well, have a fantastic week, and thank you again so much for your time. This has been awesome.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
All right, Florence. Bye.
Bye.